Welcome to When Fear Reigns, the podcast where we take a deep dive into your questions of faith. In this, our first episode, we'll take a look at what you can expect from our time together and what to expect in episode 2. Here's Dr. Parlow and Pastor Ben.
Welcome, everybody, to When Fear Reigns. I am Ben Workentine here with Dr. John Parlow. So excited for you guys to be on this journey with us as we talk about some of the really important things of faith, about Jesus, about how to get to heaven, especially keeping in mind sharing this with other people who are asking honest questions, deeper questions, questions that don't come up in Sunday school. But that are important nonetheless. And we want to help talk about some of those things, invite you into conversation, invite you to talk back through the comments and email and social media. Just get through some of those things.
It's a good idea that we probably do our own podcast, since you and I both are podcast junkies. And
I listen to one or two.
I listen to one or two a day. Yeah. So, I listen to more than that. And hopefully this will be a resource people can use for their local church, for their own walk with Christ, for getting some questions that they have, great questions answered about this Jesus who we call Lord, as they're mowing the lawn or as they're jogging in the morning, or as I say, moving in one direction at a slow pace, or if they're driving to work or dropping the kids off or whatever they're doing. If we can help, that'll be a great thing. And so I'm very excited about this. Like I said, I've been in ministry for a long time, and we didn't have podcasts way back when.
No, I suppose not. But you've got a lot of experience and continuing education, and you've studied a lot of the things that we're going to be going through. Can you just talk a little bit, John, about what you're hoping to bring to this conversation from your experience and from your education that really is going to help?
Well, my great passion is for people to understand they're ambassadors. I've never really looked at myself as a pastor. I've always looked at myself as a missionary. And so how can I best reach out to the culture in which God's placed me, and how can I help people best make the most of the opportunities God obviously gives them? Because the people that are listening right now, they probably know 3, 4, 5, 6 people right now who, if they were to assume room temperature, they don't know Jesus. That's not going to be good for them for eternity. And so they have these opportunities, and I got to believe if they're Jesus followers, they certainly want to know how they can help their friends answer very good questions. So that's really what this whole podcast is about. I kind of wish I would have had this years ago, because even as a young pastor, I got a lot of questions, and I really could have been mentored and should have been mentored and made myself available for that more often, because those questions come up. I don't care if you're a pastor, I don't care if you're a professor in some theological school. I don't care if you're the person who sits in the fourth row of your church every Sunday or Saturday night. We all got questions, and we really want to try to address those questions that are good questions with not just, Sunday school answers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stuff we're talking about is going to really, my prayer is, make an impact on the young single professional, the college student, the stay-at-home mom, the working dad, the retiree, the empty nester, and everything in between, not only for the questions that we all ask ourselves, but that other people are asking. You run into people, like you said. How do I talk to people? How do I share with people? How do I get into that conversation? These are some challenging things, and hopefully we can just kind of think through some of those responses. John, what is it about podcasting? We've tried a lot of different things around here at St. Mark. I'm pretty new here, just 7-8 months at this point, but even already we've tried a lot of different things. What is it about podcasting that gets you excited?
Podcasting, what gets me excited is it's mobile. I can listen on my phone, I can listen on my computer, I can listen, as I said, when I'm doing something to try to stay in shape, or I'm cutting the lawn, or what we call around here snow shoveling for 8 months out of the year. Or it's just something I also can share, rather than say, here, read this book. Mm-hmm. Today, I think, especially among the younger generations like yourself, podcasting, listening is the new reading. And I have to understand that, and I have to make sure I leverage that as a church leader so I can better equip the people that call St. Mark their church home, as well as reach out to people who don't know Jesus, who have no knowledge, no memory of the gospel. And so I think it's a marvelous technology that we should leverage as a Christian church.
Yeah, and I think we get to create a conversation that even goes beyond our walls. We record our sermons, and we're going live stream here pretty soon, but it is a way to have that conversation, invite to the table people who are living in Maryland or in Arizona or Boise, all across the country and around the world, really.
Yeah, no, I think oftentimes, just like just like live streaming of a service is when you have an online platform, an online congregation. It's often the front door. Maybe someone, before they'll even watch us online or visit our webpage, will say, well, let me at least listen to these guys and kind of give a flavor of who they are and whether they're worth my time. Because I understand there's a bunch of stuff out there. But if this can be part of your listening library, we think it can be very helpful.
You picked a pretty unique name in When Fear Reigns. That's what we're calling the podcast. And it can be, at first blush, you hear fear reigning. And that's exactly what's happening in the world, I think, at least from my seat as I watch the news or I see what's going on. Fear of all kinds of things. What do you mean by when fear reigns?
It's really a phrase or a quote from Genesis chapter 31. You got two major players in that time frame in God's history. You've got Laban, who is the worst father-in-law probably imaginable to man. For every guy listening here who's married, listen, your father-in-law may not be the greatest. He may be great, but he may not be the greatest, but he's not Laban, okay? He didn't
Could get worse.
Yeah, he didn't say, yeah, you can marry my daughter, but first you got to marry this other one that's probably not going to get married at some point. And so you get a 2-for-1, which doesn't go really well, I'm sure. But here, what happens in Genesis 31, Laban now and Jacob are on even ground. And Jacob's about to make a covenant, a promise before God with Laban. And he wants to make sure that Laban understands who the true God is. And so what he says in chapter 31 of Genesis twice is he says he's going to make a covenant in the name of the true God. And he calls him the fear of his father Isaac. And fear, what we put in English, a capital F. The fear of his father Isaac. And it's really a double entendre. First of all, Jacob's smart in doing that because Laban has all these household gods, and they're all foreign gods, and he's a little afraid, in fact, he's a lot afraid of the true God, Jacob's God. And so Jacob on purpose says, okay, we're going to do this covenant in the name of the real God, the true God, not your little trinkets you're hauling all over the place. No, in the true God, the fear of my father Isaac. Just to remind him, here's a true God. You can try to hide from him, but it's not going to work. And the second thing he does is he says, I'm going to do this in the name of the fear of Isaac to remind us of that awesome reverence, that awesome respect, that awesomeness of the true God, the God who is faithful, the God who is just, the God who is perfect, the God also who gives mercy and grace to his people that certainly don't deserve it, like you and me. And knowing that God always walks with you and always has your best in mind both here and especially hereafter, that changes the way you live. And so if you and I walk through our lives with fear reigning in our lives, the fear, the understanding of the fear of Isaac, the true God is always walking with us, we walk differently. We make different decisions. We craft our relationships differently. We handle difficulty and tragedy, at least we try to, differently than someone who doesn't know that awesome God, that fear of Isaac.
I think that fear, you can really easily live in that because you're exactly right. None of us deserves to live in the mercy of God. And so fear is kind of our default position. Fear of the future, fear of change, fear of disappointment, fear of loneliness, there's all kinds of things that me as a human being, I'm naturally afraid of. And when that kind of fear is debilitating, it's paralyzing, keeping me from stepping forward, keeping me from being bold. But the fear you're talking about, the fear of the Lord when that reigns in my life, now I'm not locked in. Now I can step forward in hope. Now I can live my life charitably, generously, with kindness and others-centric, because I'm not afraid of what they'll do with it. I already know. I live in that fear. It reigns in my life, and I'm not afraid.
You know who's in control. Absolutely. Absolutely. The trouble is that if we live a life in which we don't believe God's really in control, fear really doesn't go anywhere in your life. I'm sure the people listening right now know that. Fear just goes sideways or backwards. And fear most often imagines the reactions to change, any change in your life, and ignores the benefit of change. Now, you don't change for change's sake, whether you're in church world or you're in the business world or relationships or in economics. But a lot of times we're afraid to change because we're like, I don't know, because we think we're in control. Mm-hmm. And we're really not in control.
What if you make a bad decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Every day I always tell people, you wake up and you're either going to be driven by fear or by love. You're going to hand the keys to one of those two. And if you understand, you grow up and you wake up and you live your life with that fear, the one who loves you, the God who went to bat for you here through Jesus and has a hereafter which looks great and can't even be described that we can understand with our little finite minds, that's a lot different than waking up with the fear that I don't know if there's a God that loves me. I don't know that I measure up to be loved by him. I'm not really sure what's going to happen because I fear I'm in control and I'm not very good. I can hardly balance, my money, or I can't hardly pick out what I'm going to wear in the, for clothes, although Ben, you probably do that with the old. Did you grow up with granimals too? You just match up the giraffe and that works. But it's that kind of fear, and I want to give people hope in this podcast to go, there is a way to live in such a way, in a world that seems to be spinning out of control, that you can live with confidence even when people don't have it.
Yeah, that's great. What a comfort, to live in that fear. And we're going to be, this whole podcast is not meant to be kind of a fluff podcast. We're really digging in deep and digging in pretty early. Where our very next topic is going to be about Christianity. How can you know if Christianity is true among all the worldviews, all the possibilities, that whole buffet table of Eastern religions and not Christian religions, and no religion affiliation at all, or atheism. That's going to be a pretty hard-hitting podcast, just because it's such a big question.
Yeah, and like I said before, we want to make sure that this podcast is a resource for people that they can share, that they can have later to pull out of their phone and say, that's a great question. Here's something that addresses your question, to carry on those conversations, or to maybe ask some other questions to better understand where a person's coming from, or why that person believes what she believes or he stands for. So if that can be used, that's marvelous. I think that listening is the new reading, and we have to leverage that. And if we can help those listening right now to be better friends and better partners and better spouses and better moms and dads and brothers and sisters, then I think it's well worth it.
Excellent. We'll look forward to those podcasts. Next couple episodes coming right away. With our fourth episode soon to follow. But then we're going to be doing every other week will be our long-term plan, just because there's a lot of content in these podcasts, and it's gonna be fruitful. It's going to be really good to listen to and learn a lot from, but maybe a faster pace than that. And I don't think we're doing the smart thing. We're overfilling, where we want to make it in manageable bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, I don't want to leave you stuffed. I would rather leave you hungry for more, and then your feedback will tell us what you want more on, and that will help us a great deal.
Yeah, and we'll look forward to that feedback via email or social media, however you want to get in contact with us. Ask your questions, give us your thoughts, stuff you want us to talk about, topics you want us to talk about. We'd love to hear that from you. In the meantime, we look forward to seeing you next time, but hopefully our time together today has helped you to live in a way that fear reigns in your life.
Thanks for tuning in on our first episode. We'd love your feedback in the form of comments and likes. We'll see you next time on When Fear Reigns.